Good evening, boxing fans, and welcome back. Am I the only one who thinks that 2017 is already turning out to be a better year for Gennady Golovkin than this previous year was in 2016? This is Rummy's Corner. So at the start of this year, going into 2016, there were a lot of high hopes and a lot of high expectations for middleweight champion Gennady Golovkin. He was coming off a great 2015, a year that saw him win 3 times, all 3 wins coming by knockout, and this winning streak culminated in an outstanding victory against David Lemieux in a middleweight unification bout that was televised on HBO pay-per-view. So looking ahead from that point in time, it appeared as if the sky would be the limit for middleweight champion Gennady Golovkin. But things didn't go according to plan. A year that started with high hopes of unification matches with Saunders and big money fights with Canelo, none of those things materialized. And what we wound up with instead was a rather disappointing year for the middleweight sensation. So in April of this year, Golovkin made a defense of his titles against a relatively unknown mandatory challenger by the name of Dominic Wade. Not a lot of people in the boxing world knew who Wade was, and it was widely assumed going in that Golovkin would make quick work of Wade in a mismatch. And that's exactly what we got. Golovkin dropped Wade several times in the bout before ultimately finishing him off. I think it was with a big right hand in the second round. And this fight turned out to be exactly the mismatch that everybody expected it would be going in. This was a big step backwards from David Lemieux. And then in September of this year, Golovkin took an even bigger step backwards when he took on career welterweight titleist Kell Brook. Brook is a guy who had never distinguished himself as the best at 147. He never had a fight at all at 154, and he jumped straight to 160 to fight a menacing force like Golovkin. This was another mismatch in the making going into the bout. And once again, despite the fact Kell Brook had a couple of good moments of flash and success here and there, Golovkin proved to be too big, too strong, and too skilled for the smaller fighter. The fight was ultimately stopped when Brook was taking a beating. I think it was in the 5th round. And Golovkin won, and this was all he did in the whole year of 2016. 2 mismatches. A win against the unknown Dominic Wade, and a win against a welterweight title holder, Kell Brook. Now, I understand this wasn't necessarily the fights that Golovkin wanted. He was looking at a big money fight with Canelo. He was trying to get a unification bout going with Saunders. And he was in talks for a bout against Eubank Jr. in a fight that a lot of people wanted to see before he wound up fighting Kell Brook. So I understand that Wade was a mandatory, and I understand that Kell Brook represented a nice payday for Golovkin, but all the same, these weren't interesting fights. These weren't the type of fights involving Golovkin that fans were clamoring for. But here we are, just days away from the launch of 2017, and the good news broke that Golovkin and Danny Jacobs have agreed on terms and will be fighting each other on March 18th. Now already, right off the bat, this is a more meaningful fight than anything Golovkin did this year. So no matter how you look at it, at least he's getting opportunities for some bigger fights. Now Jacobs is a solid opponent. In my personal opinion, Danny Jacobs is the best guy that Golovkin has faced, at least going back since Martin Murray. I honestly believe that Jacobs, he's explosive, he's powerful, he's got a great skill set. I think this is the toughest challenge for Golovkin in quite a while. But all the same, Jacobs is still probably best known for his knockout loss suffered at the hands of Dmitry Pirog. Now that fight was years ago at this point, but a lot of fans, whenever Jacobs' name comes out, they bring up that Pirog fight. And to be sure, Pirog was magnificent on that night. He put on a spectacular performance. He scored the upset stoppage against Jacobs. After this, of course, Jacobs would go on to defeat cancer, a tougher foe than even a guy like Gennady Golovkin, which I think is something worth keeping in mind going into this bout. But most recently, the performance that Jacobs is best known for is his first round destruction of the highly regarded Peter Quillin. It was a tremendous first round victory for Jacobs. It shook up the boxing middleweight division. It surprised a lot of fans, me among them. Big win for Jacobs. They kind of put him back on the map, where he finally may have regained the type of respect he was getting heading into the Pirog fight all those years ago. So March 18th, Gennady Golovkin, Danny Jacobs. I'm really happy these two came to terms and that this fight is coming together. I honestly believe, in my own personal opinion, when I look at Danny Jacobs, I think he represents the toughest challenge out there out of anybody else at 160 pounds. Now, if you want to venture up to 168, things get different, but Gennady's not moving to 168, at least not to start the year off. He's fighting at 160, including guys like Canelo. I think Jacobs represents the toughest challenge for Golovkin. And I'm not quick to write Jacobs off in this fight either. He's explosive, he's powerful, he's got decent speed, he's got a good ring IQ, he's got a nice skill set. I don't think that this is the kind of guy you can completely write off, but all the same, I have a hard time envisioning him beating Golovkin. And it's not just because of the Dmitry Pirog fight, even if that had never happened. I think that Golovkin is just the more talented overall fighter, and I believe that he's finally getting a chance to kind of showcase what he has, what he brings to the table, the type of elite fighter that a lot of us think Gennady is, but he's never really proved it inside the ring because he hasn't fought any really good opponents. Jacobs, I think, is a really good opponent. At the end of the day, really happy this one came together. Can't wait for March 18th. Too early to make an official prediction, except that I'm leaning towards Golovkin at this time. This is Rummy. Thank you for tuning in. Please stay tuned for more episodes in the future. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to my channel. And if you're already subscribed to my channel, thank you very much for your continued support. I really do appreciate it. Have a good night, everyone. See you soon.